Onitsha do the ma, Onitsha do the ma, Onitsha Eze chima maka, Onitsha ma. Onitsha do the ma, Onitsha do the ma, Onitsha Eze chima maka, Onitsha ma.
The rolling, sliding, and panoramic view of Onitsha, Adonidu, immediately entices the eyes as you draw nearer. The seductive caresses of the winding river Niger, sheer delight, the sunshine in a blaze of white light, a sight to behold. Welcome to the East, the land of the rising sun. The bustling commercial hymn of discordant sounds from fortune seekers tells of the character of the town. Strategically located on the eastern bank of the river Niger, Onitsha is 20 square miles, that is 52 square meters in size, and stands on the windward side of the slope running eastwards from the river Niger and the water parting of the Nkisi and Idemili streams. It is bounded by Nkwele town to the north, Odegbe to the south, Ogidi, Mbo, and Oba to the east, and the river Niger to the west. It has a total population of about 7,425,000 and density of 13.030 per square meter. The indigenes constitute about 1 million of this population. Onitsha is moving gradually into modern times by the introduction of Golibe Festival as a rallying point for the Onitsha women and men.
Well, I have to say very clearly that the Golibe Cultural Festival in Onitsha is the first of its kind, both in Onitsha and in the southeast region, where a community organizes such a large-scale festival. First of all, to bring back his own children, his own citizens, sons and daughters in the diaspora and in other parts of the country, to come back together and have fun and to celebrate their culture, their art, their dance, their music, their food, their clothing, all that make us one. An opportunity also to invite our friends from far and near, to come and enjoy with us. And there's no better time to do that than at this Yuletide period, this Christmas period, where people are coming home. So we're looking forward to a very exciting period from the 24th of December till early January, and every day there will be some activity. Songs, poetry reading, art, street festival, etc., etc. So that is the beginning, and we hope that to be an annual festival and go from strength to strength. That is the purpose of the Golibe Festival. Well, again, we have to be clear on this. Benin was our last point of takeoff some 500 years ago. But our research is now indicating very, very clearly that our original migration started from Ile-Ife, way back in the 7th, 8th century AD. And then there was a sojourn in Benin for a few centuries before we continued the journey to our present position. Coming into our present position, of course, it was a small community, but because of our unique position on the river Niger, people on Onitsha became a meeting point for trade, for people from the north and the south, along the river, from the east and the west. So Onitsha became a trading point. Even the early Early European traders stopped in Onitsha. And they had their business houses in Onitsha. So Onitsha has grown as a commercial city. On the back of it, the Christianity came and anchored in Onitsha. And from Onitsha, then spread to the hinterlands, all over, up to Plateau State, up to River State, Akwa Ibom State, and so on and so forth. And behind Christianity, so you can see that education, Christianity, commerce and industry and trade, which became a melting point, and it's grown bigger and bigger. And in fact, the greater Onitsha metropolitan area, we're now looking at other communities who are our immediate neighbors. So we're all developing together. Ubosi, Bo, Ugidi, Nkwele Zudaka, Sube, and all of that. We're all now growing together and coalescing into one big metropolitan area. And that is the beauty of Onitsha. That is the challenge of Onitsha, because we have challenges, of course. Urban growth has its own challenges, but the beauty, of course, is that what was once a small enclave has become a metropolitan city with a large market, probably the largest market in West Africa, etc., etc. That is Onitsha of the present day. Having settled in Benin, in the Edo Kingdom for centuries, we obviously migrated to our present position, fully Edoized, if you can say that. We came with a distinct Edo culture. But then, arriving in our present position, we had contact, very early contact, with people from the Igala Kingdom who were trading up and down the River Niger. And many of them became part of us, the Mbelekeke family, the Mbelekeke village, the Ubikboro village, and so on and so forth. Even Umwez Aroli, the Aroli is an Igala name because his mother was Igala. And of course, living side by side with the Igbo hinterland. Intermarriages, trade, and other relationships. We have acquired part of their culture also. So Onitsha becomes a melting point, a blend of Edo, Igala, and Igbo cultures. That makes us quite distinct. We're not Edo exclusively, we're not Igbo exclusively, we're not Igala exclusively, we're a blend of all the three. And that gives us distinction, the distinction that we have as a people. And we treasure that very much. So we relate with Igbo very well, relate with Edo very well, and of course relate with Igala. Linguistically, we're now Igbos. We have to be very clear about that. We are part and parcel of the Igbo nation today. Our language is Igbo, and our social habits are largely Igbo. So Onitsha is part of Igbo land, but even within Igbo land, we have our own distinct culture, which we inherited from our past, the relationship with the Edo Kingdom and the Igala Kingdom. I think that's a great asset that we have.
Those who have studied the history of Onitsha have come across several narratives. It is for our own edification that we present the various historical narratives as they constitute part and parcel of the rich background of Onitsha people. The splendor of a sacred city. Behold Onitsha from across the river Niger, the land that beckoned the descendants of Chima, the land of the royals and of the proud, set in the sliding slope of the river Niger, bestriding the vibrant pathway of sojourners from the north, east and west. It was and is a gateway to wealth, fame and wisdom. Decorated by the Nkese and Idemili streams and the Otumoye Lake, it is a land blessed by Osebolowa, that is, the Almighty God. A sacred land, protected by the ancestors of which transgressors attract commensurate nemesis unto themselves. The allure of Onitsha is that of royalty, of a proud people, and of a culture that is at once old and rich, but also flexible. The history of Onitsha. Onitsha Donidu, Onitsha Mili, or Onitsha Eze chima, was founded by Prince Eze in 1507 AD. Onitsha natives speak a dialect of the Igbo language with several Bini Yoruba words. Examples: Apati, Apote, box; Okute, Okuta, rock; and Ogede, that is banana. Also, some Edo words are still in use by the Onitsha. For example, Ododo, red; Oyoyo, beautiful; and Osebolowa, Oseboa, Osanoboa, Almighty God. It is said that the word Onitsha is a corruption of the word Orisha. The religion Orisha is practiced among Yorubas and Haitians. However, this is a subject for further discourse, as the name Onitsha is also said to mean the despiser, because of the ferocious manner the Onitsha people dealt with their enemies as they marched down to the land east of the Niger. For some scholars, the grain of truth, which is the best one can do in sifting through history that is several centuries old, is that Eze Chima had a dispute with the Oba of Benin, and as a result was forced into exile from Benin Kingdom in 1560s. The wide geographical spread of Eze Chima descendants forms a basis for deducing that there was a mass migration at this period of time. It should also be noted that the historical timeline indicates that the mass migration coincided with the Atlantic slave trade. Consequently, it could be deduced that the descendants of Eze Chima were refugees fleeing from the Oba of Benin and his slave traders. The Adonidu theory. Now, according to B.O. Elua, who authored the book Adonidu, History of Igbo Origin, or the Bonelson's Global Company Limited 2008, is a discussion with Obiokosi II. Onitsha people were Ado origin and are related to the Bini Idu Elua 2008, volume 21. Further, Obika Benoba of Abo in 1950 confirmed to him, the author, when he met him, that Onitsha and Abo peoples are descendants of Ado. It was the case that all descendants of Adonidu shared a 4-day week heritage and had the same names for the days of the week. Ado was said to be an abode in the Yoruba country and had the ancient name of Onitsha Ado, and that Bini people were cousins of Onitsha people. Like Onitsha Ado, all the Onitsha or Onitsha communities in western and eastern Igbo land must have originated from Ado, and that the various Onitsha in Yoruba land were their remnants, as contained in Elua 2008, that is volume 24. This led to this particular author to conclude that all the Onitsha and Onitsha belong to one Onitsha ethnic clan, and of all other groups with identical or similar names as equally remotely related. For him, therefore, all peoples of Igbo land must have migrated from Ado. Eluwa's 50-year research opines that the Igbo and Edo and their related tribes constituted the migration group which founded the empire of Adonidu. Adonidu is believed to be the most powerful kingdom of Nigeria up to the 8th century. Roughly speaking, Adonidu was situated on the west bank of the lower Niger Basin. Its northern boundary is believed to have also included Nupe land. It was bounded on the northern boundary. It was bounded in the east by the river Niger, on the west by much of the territory of Benin Republic, formerly Dahomey, and on the south by the Atlantic Ocean. Although the names Igbo and Edo may not have any racial connotations. They do have cultural connotations. There are Egyptian elements indicated by the presence of dual organization in Igbo culture, and the Hebraic element signified by the circumcision of Igbo male children on the 8th day. To find some Canaanite or Hebrew culture among African people would identify that people with Canaanite or Hebrew contact. This should be true of the Igbo and the related tribes of Adonidu, as contained in Eluwa's 2008 volume 65 theory, that also includes the Onitshas. The Ife connection. Yet another narrative of the history of Onitsha breached began with the migration of its people. The migration was as a result of a wave of unrest, war, and displacement unleashed by the Islamic movement from North Africa. History has it that at a time in Ile-Ife, an Ife prince, Oramio, who was the last born of the 7 sons of Oduduwa, had a spiritual re-instruction to go and get some water from a big river around Benin to help cure his father of an eye problem that was almost ruining his sight. Custodians of oral tradition, both in Benin and Ile-Ife, agree on this story. In the course of his journey to Benin, he founded many settlements and also had children from women given to him by locals as his journey progressed. Oromila, which is a deity native to the Ile-Ife, may have been one of the exploits of Aramio to Benin in respect of religion. This, more than anything, suggests that he stayed long enough in Benin. Though the river Oramio visited around Benin was not specified, one is wont to believe that it was the river Niger. However, the fact that Oramio had children in Benin Kingdom showed that there were Yorubas in the kingdom. And once there were such elements in Benin, it is not unlikely that some found their way to Onitsha for some reasons. In fact, just a year ago, the Benin Kingdom, in reviewing its history, announced a revision stating that the first Oba of Benin Kingdom was not Oba Eweka the first, but Oba Oramio. The title of Oba was used after the Ogiso title was created by Oba Oramio. Oba Eweka the first, who was Oramio's son, is said to have ascended to the power sometime between 1180 and 1300 AD. This is instructive and has implications for Onitsha history in relation to Benin and Ife. It is agreed from both sides, Ife and Benin histories, that Oramio returned to Ife from Benin after he installed his son Eweka I as Oba of Benin when he became frustrated with the strange land. Show me www.gamji.com. Reference point. Indeed, according to S.I. Bosa, in the groundwork of the history and culture of Onitsha, the people of Benin migrated to Nigeria as it is today from Egypt at about 900 AD. He stated that they first settled at Ile-Ife in Yorubaland, but after a period of time, they left the town and finally settled in the Midwest on a vast location where Benin City is today. This narrative by Bosa tallies with that presented by Eluwa. It is believed that against the backdrop of the movement from Ife, the present people of Onitsha, as part of this movement, left the outskirts of Ile-Ife and resettled in the Benin Kingdom, and soon established themselves as one of the clans in the Benin Kingdom, exercising all the rights and privileges attached thereon. As a result of a long process of acculturation in Benin, the Onitsha people jealously gathered their acquired rights, particularly with regard to their revered Udo shrine. Therefore, Bosa in 1974 asserts that in the light of the relationship with the people of Benin, the claim of Onitsha people that their progenitors came from Egypt and first domiciled in Ife, and then in Edo land for centuries before settling finally on the river Niger, is plausible and understandable. It has been variously suggested that the reason why the Onitsha people quarreled with Oba Isije, that is in 1504 to 1550 of Benin, was because of the slight the Oba gave their Udo shrine. It was then customary for a newly installed Oba to pay homage to all important shrines in the Benin kingdom by slaughtering a cow in the shrine's enclave. Oba Isije failed to do this at the Onitsha people's Udo shrine. Hence, the quarrel arose. It took Onitsha people several years before they got to Obio and Ela, and finally crossed the river Niger and established Onitsha Ado, or Onitsha Mili. They had stopped at several places like Abo and Iseluku, and this explains the affinity with inhabitants of the western delta like Ela, Iseluku, Obankpa, Onitsha Olona, Onitsha Ubo, Obio, Isela Zagba, Isela Mpitimi, Onitsha Uku, and Obankpa, otherwise known as Eze Chima clan. Another version of the Ife connection had it that the Onitsha man had his cradle from Ife. The progenitor tradition had it that one of the Oduduwa's sons was begotten for him by a vagrant Arab woman. On account of his addiction to hard work, his father called him Onitsha Eze, meaning a man of work, from which his descendants inhabiting the eastern bank of the Niger derived the name Onitsha or Onitsha. It is said that from Ife, Onitsha moved with his children to Benin, where he died, and where his children multiplied as they intermarried with the Beninese. Some of the Onitsha's who could not put up with the Oba of Benin's tyranny left Udo, Onitsha people's residential area in Benin, as early as the 10th century and settled elsewhere, founding the towns of Obio, Obankpa, Iseluku, Isele Petima, and Isela Zagba. It is said that it was in the 16th century that Onitsha people left the western bank of the Niger River, or their present habitation, under Obi Oreze and Obi Chimevi. It is important to remark that other hands and other bands of people joined the Onitsha after their arrival in their new habitation. An example was the Egbemas from Ahoda area of River State. They integrated with the Oboliekes, while some of their kith and kin traveled to Ozobolo to found the Egbema clan there. The Egbemas were a warrior clan. Other bands included the Galas, who arrived with their long juju in the 18th century to form the larger segment of Obi-Ikporo quarters, with the Oreze family at the center. The Edo Sojourn. This is a very important part of Onitsha history. The story has it that the people of Onitsha were part of the Edo tribe. It is for this reason that Onitsha people fondly call their town Onitsha Adonidu, meaning Onitsha of Edo origin. It is also believed that the immigrants were nicknamed Onitsha only after their exodus from Benin by people whose territory they marched through, ravaging all that stood in their way. According to Chief Ebareva in his book, A Short History of Benin, the people of Onitsha left Benin to seek a new place in the 16th century during the reign of Oba Isije, who ruled Benin Empire from 1504 to 1550, as contained in Bosa, 1974. The migrants used guns against their adversaries, firearms having been used by the Benin since the 15th century, when they were introduced by a Portuguese, John Afonso Alveiro. That is contained in Bosa's thesis, 1974. On getting to Obio, which was named after one of Chima's daughters, some of the emigrants who got tired during the immigration and decided to discontinue the march founded towns like Onitsha Ugbo, Onitsha Olona, Onitsha Ukwu, and Onitsha Ibabo in the Eka area of the West Niger. Others settled in towns like Abo, Ila, Iseluku, Ibuza, and identify themselves as Eze Chima, that is, children of Chima. It was Oreze, one of Chima's sons, who led the establishment of Onitsha Eze. A similar narrative, which authenticates the previous version, has it that Onitsha Mili, known as Adonidu, was founded by one of the sons of Chima, Oreze, after a section of the emigrants left Iseluku Kingdom in western Igbo land. Chima, a prince of the ancient Bini Kingdom, had emigrated, settled, and founded what is now known as Iseluku in today's Onitsha North local government area. It was the eldest son of Chima, Oreze, who eventually emigrated across the River Niger to establish the Onitsha community, Ake Usu, in 1992, in his book. Further, they, one of Chima's sons, left some children at Onitsha, Umude village, and went on to establish the ruling house of Uguta. About the name Onitsha Adonidu, it is also believed that it was during the passage through the outskirts of Ile-Ife that they acquired the name Onitsha, a corruption of the Yoruba word Orisha and Udo, the famous shrine worshipped by the people. Therefore, the people of Onitsha left the outskirts of Ile-Ife and resettled in Benin Kingdom, and left after some disagreement and conflict with Oba Isije. Upon their arrival on the east bank, Onitsha Mili, the community gradually became a unitary kingdom, evolving from a loosely organized group of royal villages to encompass non-royal villages, comprising Igala settlers and the native Igbos, to form a more centralized entity. More immigrants from the hinterland of Igbo land were drawn to the emerging boom town, as did the British traders who settled there in Onitsha and coordinated the palm oil and cash crops trade. The flight from Edo. There are several narratives of the incident that led to the emigration of Onitsha people from Benin. Tradition at Onitsha tells of two princes of Idu who early in the 16th century contested succession of their father's throne. When the younger prince lost the contest, he removed himself from Idu and resettled among the people of Ado, whom he proceeded to organize into a formidable army against the day when he would have to challenge his half-brother, which happened sooner than later. Rather than accept defeat and surrender after suffering heavy casualties, Chima, that is Ahime, led his forces out of Adonidu. He was a powerful man whose name was corrupted to Chime and then Chima. This was after he had carried off the Ufie, the only emblem of Idu royalty that he could locate. The Ufie are a pair of cylindrical wooden drums, with which royalty at Idu proclaimed each new dawn. From Adonidu, Chima led his men eastwards in about 1520 AD. They went through Ozaragogoro, which he renamed Habo, and came to Obio, where he lived for a long time. Chima's staff of office, Ngwaglega, is said to still stand where he planted it. And before his death, Chima fathered many children, according to Nzeku, 1997. In another version, we are told of how Isije, mother of the Oba of Benin, one day entered into the farmland of Onitsha people in search of firewood. The farmers took objection to this, which they considered a trespass, and therefore beat her up. On getting home, she reported to the Oba, who ordered his giant warrior, Buala, to punish and drive the farmers away. And so, the exit of the Onitsha people from Benin was precipitated, according to Ikejoba, 1967, volume 15, Azikiwe, 1970, volume 11 to 12, and Nzeku, 1997, volume 1. Yet another version was told by elders of Onitsha Chima on both sides of the river Niger. The story runs thus. Once upon a time, a great chief whose office was hereditary died in Benin. During his funeral, a quarrel arose between two factions of his family as to which of them will bury him. The matter reached a point where, on the advice of Oba Isije, two coffins were placed side by side, purported a point where, on the advice of Oba Isije, two coffins were placed side by side, purported to contain the corpse of the chief. Now, one of the coffins was carved and highly decorated, while the other was plain and unattractive. The stronger side of the contestants hastily carried away the decorated coffin for burial, only to be dismayed at the graveside to find that it contained a log wood. The other side, meanwhile, discovered their luck, hurriedly buried the chief, and inherited the chieftaincy title. Consequent upon this incident, the disappointed side refused to accept the verdict and therefore packed bag and baggage after a fight and left their fatherland for good in search of a new settlement. Their leader was a powerful man called Ahime, a name later corrupted to Chime and then later Chima. After their departure from Benin, the emigrants traveled eastwards to the bank of the river Niger, passing through Ozara Agogoro, through Abo. Onitsha people intermixed, and hence the Onitsha language is intermixed with some Yoruba and Benin words. From Abo, Chima arrived Obio, where the Oba of Benin sent messages for him to return, but he declined. Onitsha people had carried from Benin to Ekaland their traditional vocation of bronze casting and smithworks. They were known to make state swords, gun barrels, cutlasses, spears, hoes, ornaments, and utensils. They were also weavers, traders, and farmers. Eze Chima was visited by some Igala friends who told him about a beautiful, fertile land, uninhabited, on the eastern bank of the river Niger. This story very much impressed Chima, and he made plans for migration. But what a misfortune! He took ill and died. It is said that he was very old. After many months of funeral, his remains were buried at Obio. Then came the eventful day for the movement towards the new land. Prince Eze, who temporarily led the journey towards Onitsha with the help of Igala compatriots, assembled hundreds of canoes, and the crossing was made across the river Niger smoothly, as the oracle forecasted, according to Smith, 1970, volume 11. Eze was later crowned king, and he proved to be a wise ruler. History of Onitsha Chima. While the various narratives appear to question each other, there seemed to be a broad consensus that the origin of Onitsha Chima goes beyond Bini to Ile-Ife. It is agreed that Onitsha Chima were part of the earlier settlers in Ile-Ife, even before the coming of the Yorubas and the Oduduwa story. Recent information from Benin Kingdom has it that Oramio was the first in the lineage before Oba Eweka, and that the Edos, therefore, have their roots from Ile-Ife, which invariably has implications for the origin of Ndi Onitsha. Although there are several narratives about the exodus of the Onitsha people from Benin, two versions in particular are of importance. One, the Queen Mother version and the trespass on the farm. Two, the struggle for succession and the ensuing conflict that led Chime, later Chima, and his followers to leave Benin. Oral history and artifacts from across the Niger, especially Obio, lend credence to the narrative that Onitsha Eze or Onitsha Mmili is one of the descendants of the Chima clan. Eze Chima himself was buried at Obio upon his demise. The other descendants in order of seniority that make up his clan, as documented from Obio, include Opale, Obio, Onitsha Ugbo, Onitsha Olona, Onitsha Eze, Oligbo Iselukwu, Anaba, Obonkpa. The other descendants in order of seniority that make up his clan, as documented from Obio, include Opale, Onitsha Ugbo, Onitsha Olona, Onitsha Eze, Oligbo Iselukwu, Anaba, Obankpa, Oheze Onitsha Mmili, and Mozei Igbodo Idimobi. This notwithstanding, a holistic appreciation of the origin of Onitsha cannot but also consider the other contending versions that there was influence from Igala, which resulted in some villages in Onitsha having ties with the Igalas, and also from the east. Process of coronation. The kingship is a very old and revered institution, highly respected by Onitsha indigents. This is no doubt as a result of the rigorous processes undertaken before Obi emerges. Obi should show humility. He now sweeps Onowu's compound. He repairs the roof of Onowu's house, breaks wood, fetches water to teach humility. Qualities to be found in Obi. During the reign of Obi Okose, it was agreed that Obiship should come out from two families, Umuezarole and Okebonabo. Onitsha kingship, a unique halo. It was Chima who was said to have introduced kingship and indicie titles in Onitsha. For the purpose of maintaining political and historic identity, the Onitsha inland town is divided into 9 groups known as Onitsha Ebo Itenani. These are Umueze Chima, Obankpa, Ubulunikem, Olutu, Obio, Ugwu, Ubene, Eke, and Aborunte. The Umueze Chima are descendants of Eze Chima and therefore kingmakers. They have their respective rulers known as Ezedi, puppet king, who internally rule but owe allegiance to the Obi. The Obi Abogidi rules with the help of Ndichie that includes the Onowu Yasele, traditional prime minister, the Ogene, Udu, Owele, Omu, Queen Mother, the Ajie Okadiugu, and Onyia Ozoma. The Ndichie serve as Obi's councillors, and of three greats, Ndichie Ume, Ndichie Okwa, and Ndichie Okwa Eze. The Ndichie Ume were formerly war chiefs and served as members of the Obi's cabinet. They execute principal administrative duties generally and in their respective localities. In modern times, the Ndichie play the role of public relations officers in the interest of the Imo Obi. They also help maintain law and order, uphold the propriety of religious and customary practices, dispense justice according to the law, and promote social welfare. Onitsha Kingship Line from Chima to Achebe. The Obiship of Onitsha is over 565 years old, and at present has on the throne His Majesty Nnemeka Alfred Ugochukwu Achebe as the 21st Obi of Onitsha. When the ruling Obi joins his ancestors, the Onowu Iyesele takes charge until a new Obi is enthroned. The Obi ruled Onitsha for about 3 centuries according to the traditional law and customs until 1901, when customary laws were resolved into the native court system by the British colonial government. The Obi became the permanent chairman, with head chiefs of the various neighboring towns as members. A chronology of Onitsha sovereigns. 1. Obi Eze chima. 2. Obi Eze. 3. Obi Chima Evi. 4. Obi Chimoku. 5. Obi Chima Eze. 6. Obi Nafia. 7. Obi Tasia. 8. Obi Zarole. 9. Obi Olisa. 10. Obi Chimedie. 11. Obi Omozele. 12. Obi Ijelekbe. 13. Obi Udogu. 14. Obi Akazue. 15. Obi Diale. 16. Obi Anazong. 17. Obi Samuel Okose. 18. Obi James Okose. 19. Obi Joseph Okudele Onyejekwe. 20. Obi Okechukwu Ofala Okabwe. 21. Obi Alfred Nnemeka Achebe. Revered grottos and sacred locations. In Onitsha, there are revered deities with revered grottos or sacred locations that are still respected and given reverence by all true Onitsha indigents. These include Obina Mili, Otumoyo Linri, Nkese, Ani Onitsha, Ojedi, Atabusi, Uto, Ogugu. The deities like Ani Onitsha, the earth deity, Otumoye, the river deity, and Uto attract cult followership. Prayers are often offered to Ogugu shrine for a child. The shrines of these deities are sacred places, and their priests perform important functions for their localities and the town as may be required. Other deities include Omini and Oronye. Onitsha deities, a pact with the past. The Onitshas have strong traditional religious beliefs that help in the organization of society and in governance. Religious belief in Onitsha is typified by the trust in an almighty God. Okase Akase is an Besialobe, King of Kings, and in the belief in life after death, existence of spirits and deities, reincarnation, predestination, divination, and the efficacy of charms. Hence, the various Onitsha villages have associated archetypal deities that either protect them or guide their activities. They are as follows. Aze Umwezarole, Aro Umwikem, Ogugu, Omolike and Obikporo, Okike Obolieke, Ojedi Mudei, and Uto Mwasele and Odoje. Administrative and traditional structures, an old but sophisticated heritage. Onitsha has an effective framework for traditional governance. At the helm of affairs is the Obi, followed by his Council of Chiefs, Ndichies. Below the Council of Chiefs are various representative organizations that carry out respective spiritual, social, and political functions in line with the traditions. Onitsha is one of the few ancient kingdoms that are still surviving in Africa, with a large part of its culture and traditional political architecture still intact. At the end of the 19th century, the Onitsha kings and chiefs had great political power. And even as recent as in the early 1960s, the Onitsha king was the president of the Onitsha City Council. Traditionally, the Obi governs with Ndichie as councillors to maintain law and order and uphold religious and customary practices. The Abalanze Association of also titled men, in consultation with the Obi and Ndichie, decides measures to be imposed on any person who contravenes religious rights. The Ndichies play the role of justices of peace in their localities. Beginning from 1876, Onitsha had and still have 8 grades that help in the organization of society and the modulation of the activities of the populace. The oldest grade, Obonachiane, which is the ruling age grade, comprises men of a certain age grade appointed by the Obi to be the watchdog of people's rights and liberties. However, the bastion of Onitsha democracy and the common people, otherwise called Abalaniregu, although these are not titled men and women, they serve as the bulwark of the body politic. The Obiship institution governed Onitsha until 1901 according to traditional laws and customs, before customary laws were devoluted into the native court system by the British colonial government. Language of the Onitsha people is sonorous dialect. The Onitsha people have a very unique and languorous sonorous language that at once captivates and enchants other Igbo-speaking peoples and even non-speakers. The Onitsha language is the most pleasant of all Igbo dialects and was commonly used as the central language in the southeast of Nigeria, especially during the colonial times. The Onitsha language falls within the group of language of the Semi-Congo, one of the sub-features of the Near Congo. Generally, the Igbo language is fraught with numerous dialects that could be arranged in clusters. However, 2 of these dialects are unduly recognized by linguists. These are Onitsha and Owere. The Onitsha Igbo is written and spoken with neither nasalization nor aspiration. The Onitsha dialect in its spoken form is more used than the Central Igbo because it is the form of Igbo most often learned for purposes of trade by non-Igbos. Having lost its nasalization and aspirations, which are phonologically derived in some other Igbo varieties, it has the advantage of simplification, thereby facilitating the learning process of both Igbos and non-Igbos. Statistics have shown that there are 26 consonants in the Onitsha dialect of Igbo, attesting to its simplification. Women groups of Onitsha. The position of women and their role in the Onitsha political matrix is typically exemplified in the various women groups that add to the power balance in Onitsha Kingdom. The Onitsha women traditionally had an important role to play and is not in doubt. The bodies that involve the women participation in the politics of Onitsha could be classified as a hierarchical order as follows: Umu, Utuodo, Ikporo Onitsha, Iyeme Umuada, age grade, the lowest. The Omu was a powerful symbol of women representation and was a well-respected institution in Onitsha. As far back as 1910, Onitsha women were involved in direct governance during the reign of Obiukosi I, who with Omu Nwabuka jointly signed the deed that leased Onitsha land in the government reservation area GRA to white investors. Originally, within the scheme of things in Onitsha town, the position of the Omu had to do with communing with the world of witches, which role is supposed to bring fortune to the community. The Omu had no administrative responsibilities and was not connected with the management of the Mbademe group, which is headed by the Oba carrier, not the Omu, who, incidentally, is always the oldest woman in the community. The Mbademe group comprises the Umuada and women married to men of the community. The Omu, known as the Queen Mother, and not necessarily the king's wife or the mother, was very influential in the town's affairs. She was often selected by the Obi and must be of a high social standing with proven ability for patriotism and dynamic leadership. The Omu used to be a member of Obi's cabinet. The Otuodo Society is the most prominent society among women's social organizations in Onitsha. It is an old institution on whose pedestal the dignity of womanhood is elevated. It comprises all the titled women. The society members help in the running of the affairs of the town. They mediate in the settlement of land disputes and marriage conflicts. The Ikporo Onitsha carries out day-to-day activities affecting Onitsha. They initiate action through which some of Onitsha customs will be conducted. For example, they can state what to expect during funeral ceremonies or during traditional marriages. The Ikporo Onitsha is headed by Isi Ikporo, and by virtue of her being the oldest woman in Onitsha, the Oba carrier. The Yemedi is another body made up of all the wives married according to Onitsha tradition into a particular village. Membership is automatic once one is married by one of the sons of the village. It is for both female indigents and non-indigents. This group is headed by the oldest married wife who presides over any of the activities. Seniority among them is not based on age of the individual, rather on the time one is married into that particular village. The body is always involved in mediation and settlement of marriage conflicts in polygamous families. If a son of the village is taking any title, the Yemedi must be informed. The cooking must be done by them. The Umuada is a strong and powerful body that comprises daughters within a particular village. This group is a kind of pressure group that tries to protect the interest of their brothers in relation with other Onitsha sons. The leader has the custody of the Ofo, which gives her power to deliberate over the group. They settle disputes among the Umadas or between themselves and their menfolk or their wives, including land disputes and sharing of property. They play a major role at the village level politics and in the Onitsha tradition, and can make things work or not to work. The unmarried Onitsha girls perform important functions in the event of the death of a young man or girl, which is referred to as Ozu Mwebe, and in traditional marriage performs the Iduno, that is, escorting the new bride to her husband's house, Ojeba, ND. In addition, during the New Yam Festival, unmarried Onitsha virgin girls herald the festival by cleansing the family quarters, Ijuno, to usher in the seasons of harvest. Onitsha interest groups, home and abroad. 1. The Obeying Council. 2. Obonachiani. 3. Abalanze. 4. Utuodo. 5. Abalani Regu. 6. Iboronicha. And 7. Utuobo. Others include Onitsha Improvement Union, OIU, Ado Integrity Initiative, G36, Onitsha Forum, Onitsha Professional Ladies Circle, Onitsha Youth Council, OYC, Stroke Action Nigeria, Come Alive Initiative, National Association of Onitsha Ado Students, and Onitsha Groups in Diaspora. The future. According to Chief J.H.C. Okolo San, the rebirth of Onitsha can be said to have been solidified by the Treaty of October 15, 1877, made between the renowned first Christian king of Onitsha, Obi Anazong, and Queen Victoria of Great Britain, which ushered in the first revolutionary trends in the cultural patterns of the people with the abolition of human sacrifices and the propagation of Christianity within Onitsha Kingdom. Onitsha's kingship system is unique and deserves to be preserved and cherished. According to Ezenia Dr. Onitsha Eze OON San JP, in the light of modernization and globalization as these relate to the future, there is a need for the preservation of the advantages of customary arbitration and the procedure of engagement of the King's Court. For the future, maintaining the cultural integrity of Onitsha community must be measured by the realities of the moment. Onitsha history is a history of a rich past of valor, royalty, culture, adventure, and enterprise. Under the visionary leadership of Obi Alfred Nnemeka Achebe, the 21st Obi, the ancient but civilized town is set to regain its value and prestige as a melting pot of culture, civility, commerce, and progress. Much can be said about colonial influence on Onitsha people as a result of missionary activities of some Europeans and Christianity. It is, however, instructive that in spite of early embrace of the white men and the message of Christianity, the Onitsha people culture has subsisted and has a very significant impact on Onitsha men and women. Soon after, Father Luz was led to the King's Palace by Mr. Townsend, where they met Obi Anazong. After introduction by Mr. Townsend, Father Luz explained his mission to the Obi and besides made a request for a parcel of land opposite the beach where he would like to establish his mission. In 1902, the Reverend Father Joseph Shenaham, a well-known educationist in Ireland, arrived at Onitsha. His first evangelical assignment was at Oboli, where he took over the parish. After some years, he worked at the Benue and Calabar stations. When he finally returned to Onitsha, he succeeded Father Lujan, who had then retired. He was appointed Prefect Apostolic of the Lower Niger in 1905. As an educationist, Father Shenaham had developed new ideas about the evangelization of Igbo land. While he supported the essence of providing social services for Christians in and around mission locations, he envisaged the feasibility of spreading education among the younger generation as a means of getting their parents and relations interested in the affairs of the church. His Royal Highness Igwe Alfred Nnemeka Achebe Abogidi has proven over the years of his reign to be a visionary and focused leader. He has therefore led the intellectual revolution for the revival of Onitsha and the strategic positioning of the town for survival in modern times.
Well, a little over 2 years ago, based on my interactions with our people, Onitsha people, both at home and outside Onitsha, in Lagos, Port Harcourt, even overseas, and my discussions with the Rubin Council, that is the Chiefs Council, it became obvious that certain many aspects of our lives were falling behind the change that has been taking place in the late 20th century and early 21st century. We're now in the digital age, the age of rapid change and so on. And we decided to basically institute a large study engaging our people both in Onitsha and outside Onitsha to work in work streams, about 15, 16 work streams on a range of issues, education, on certain elements of our culture. How do we bring our people home more frequently? How do people in diaspora, who are Onitsha people, feel part and parcel of Onitsha, etc., etc. The role of IT in our day-to-day life, the social transformation, our youth challenges. How do we help our youth grow up to become leaders of not of tomorrow but even of today, etc. So we set up 15 work streams, and the works have produced very high quality studies and recommendations, which we now have gone into the implementation stage. So we've got our implementation groups working on various issues. The Golibe Festival is one of the outcomes of these studies. How do we create a platform for our young people to come together, work together, live together, have fun together, etc. With other work streams, other recommendations for implementations are on. We're building a brand new website now that will be completely interactive, to provide a forum for Onitsha people, wherever they are, to engage with each other electronically and debate issues and come up with solutions and so on. We're building a database for Onitsha people, particularly our young ones, our professionals. I want to know how many doctors do I have in Onitsha, where are they located, and so on. Health issues, lifestyle. We have set up a program to advise people, particularly our older ones in Onitsha, who may not have access to ready medical facilities and so on how to organize their life, how to live a much healthier life, dieting, for instance, what to eat and what not to eat, etc. Simple but very deadly illnesses like hypertension, diabetes, which can be managed very easily by taking medication and so on. Stroke, we have a stroke management center, etc. So it's really, as we termed it, moving Onitsha to the next level. So no aspect of our community life is excluded from scrutiny on how to move ourselves to the next level, so that we can keep pace with change and transformation that is taking place all over the world. The world is a small, it's a global village now, so we can't stay behind, and others are moving forward, and then we'll just get extinct. That is the whole purpose of the study. And it's a continuous process. We had a conference, the whole community had a conference about a year ago now. We're not having one this year. Next year, about a year from now, we're going to have a conference. So it will either be a biennial conference or an annual conference, as we decide, to manage and monitor the achievements we've made on various aspects of our lives, and to determine the new challenges that come up that we have to pursue. I think that was the purpose of the large-scale study, taking Onitsha to the next level. The youth area, we've done quite a lot of work in the youth area, on education, on entrepreneurship, and on drug addiction, fighting drug addiction amongst our youth. It's all about community development and moving the whole community forward, with everybody participating. That's what it's all about. Thank you.
Ife Jabo Onitsha Erika.